I'm very, very sorry for interrupting that very beautiful beginning to this Teisho. And I thank Carmen and Roshi for it so, and Roli Roshi for it so much, and in particular for their wonderful invitation. A great honor to give this Teisho to you today. Our Sanghas share so much. First, our mutual loved teacher, Sister Elaine Roshi, who spent 19 years in the Philippines before arriving in England to found the Oxford Zen Center and what's known as now the London Jizo Zen Center. And then in 2001, after Sister Elaine had left for Canada, Sister Rosario Roshi came and stayed as our guide for 3 months. So we owe you a lot. And I think even from those very early days, we always felt part of this Zendo. Maybe the Northern Hemisphere cousins, but no distance at all. It's a wonderful joy, as Carmen said in her invitation, to experience one universal Sangha. Today's koan is case 43 from the Hekiganroku, or the Blue Cliff Record. And it's called Tozans, Cold and Heat. This is the case. A monk asked Tozan, when cold and heat come, how should one avoid them? Tozan said, why not go to a place where there is neither cold nor heat? The monk said, what kind of place is it where there is neither cold nor heat? Tozan said, when it is cold, the cold kills you. When it is hot, the heat kills you. The monk wants to escape. He says, when cold and heat come, how can one avoid them? And Tozan says, why not go to a place where there is neither cold nor heat? Go straight to it. Immerse yourself fully in life every moment, in this place. In this place, there's no monk, no cold, no heat, and no one talking right now, strange as it may seem. The monk said, what kind of place is it where there is neither cold nor heat? Where is this place? The monk doesn't know that it's right here. And furthermore, this place is himself. This place is yourself. Tozan said, when it is cold, the cold kills you. When it is hot, the heat kills you. Well, we can't avoid the cold and heat any more than we can avoid our painful emotions. They keep coming. Regrets, remorse, misery, fear, and shame. There's no point in trying to evade them because you can't. When someone you care for is terminally ill, you can't pretend it's all right. There's no place to get away from it. So why not take it to the place free of advancing death, sickness, and old age? When you take your condition fully into your embrace, we're right here in the wholeness of nirvana itself. In this place, nothing is good or bad, and nothing is unequal. Nothing is separate or missed out. Our one true self is completely intimate in itself. It means that all the affliction of our situation are being dealt with in one intimacy. It's so easy to say we are one, but this one, this no separation, is so deep. Nothing is missed out. Not a single Taliban fighter, not the plagues of the past or the pandemics of the future. Zazen helps us to live this fully. And we learn to trust the Jiriki power which rises when we sit in meditation. Sitting at the Dharma gate of peace and repose in practice shows us what a great help Zazen is. It encourages our essential nature to flow with much less interruption, so that daily life, in all its glorious and painful challenges, can be lived in the Dharma unconsciously. The title of this koan is Tozan's Cold and Heat, but I'm going to change the order and take heat first, because 2 weeks ago, in temperatures of 40 degrees centigrade, my whole body was pouring with water from the heat, bringing Tozan's words to mind. And perhaps some of you are in this heat right now, wherever you are. I was in Greece, where the government sent siren fire alarms to our telephones because of the raging fires in the islands, in the mainland, and in all the neighboring countries, where whole villages and forests were being consumed. And 35 years ago, in the very place that I stay, hillsides of really ancient, 200 years old olives were burnt down in a terrifying blaze. And the next morning, I remember walking in the blackened ash through the remains of animals and empty tortoise shells, devoid of living creatures that had tried to flee. And bending down to pick one up, suddenly the tiniest green shoots showed themselves, pushing through the scorched earth. It took my breath away. After one of her divine revelations, the 14th century English mystic, Mother Julian, said, "It was shown that the whole of life is grounded and rooted in love." Zen practice is all about awakening to this love and compassion. It's the root of all we are essentially, and all we do. It's never apart. In heat, in cold, in fires and loss, our original nature is completely pure. When you really look carefully, you can't miss the ancient power which cuts through even in the bleakest moment and allows you respite. And it might simply be an unconscious moment to make yourself a cup of tea and sit down. Just to sit down for a while. Sounds so ordinary. Tozan's directions are relevant today as the climate crisis advances. This summer recorded the worst wildfires ever in Europe, North America, Russia, Australia, India, China, Asia, including, I think, the forest fires earlier this year in Benguet in the Philippines. If you face the heat of your fears and let them burn you away, you discover the place where there is neither heat nor cold. And it helps change the way you live. I mean, we're already learning to live more sensitively, seeing how vital cooperation and harmony is in our planet. But even these stark facts about global warming can be faced just as they are, because when you don't try to escape them, our Buddha nature is freed to act accordingly. One of the many joys of Zazen is that you don't need to try to solve every problem, because despite even blooming awful days, at times, everything is working perfectly. A vast, unsurpassable radiance never stops flowing. It's you, yourself. When you find yourself grieving about the huge numbers of insects that have declined this year, it helps to remember that each insect is completely whole with who we are. Each beetle alone. Each beetle, right here, included in Shakyamuni's marvelous transformation. Even though each beetle is totally perished, it is continually expounding the Dharma, luminously and unceasingly. All living creatures are totally extinguished right now. Yet our existence in an infinite, indescribable transparency stretches beyond the limits of what we call time. Nothing here, including no death, no birth. Total clarity is total clarity. Yet the whole universe is laughing and crying. Trees are swaying. The sun is shining. And humans and animals are being born and dying. Zazen helps us to catch glimpses of our true self. It doesn't stop the raw pain about hearing that the ice caps are melting. But wholeness is wholly intimate and mysteriously full of capabilities. Even though each of us is completely whole, the entire universe, in fact, extraordinary possibilities take us by surprise. And when you open to them, even the tiniest, most trivial incident makes you pause in wonder, in gratitude. And then agitation about our world in uproar quietens down. If you give yourself totally to intense heat, it devours you. And you can see that heat alone is not separate from anything. Not from cold, not from this bell, not from its sound. Tozan's command that when it is hot, swelter to death is an exact instruction for us. If you came to Zen to know who you really are, extinguish yourself in Zazen, in Mu, in each miraculous breath. You must have heard it so many times, but it helps to hear it many times. It helps me to hear it many times. Let Mu annihilate you, consume you. Then you'll see the supreme, indestructible body itself. A Zen sitter I knew said that she had been boiling with anger most of her life and had often tried to release it, even with professional help. And when she came to Zen, she finally stopped trying and stopped wanting to understand it. Then, many, many years later, she realized one morning that the anger had gone, completely dissolved. After all her sitting, she said, she saw that there is nothing here, no anger, not even herself. It's an extraordinary boon to know that when you sit in wholehearted practice, the entire universe is sitting with you in one transmission with all Buddhas and all Dharmas. During the last year of COVID, lockdowns all over the world, and your own lockdown this month, I expect you might have said, as many people have said, how chilly and lonely they felt being cut off from each other. We love human company and sharing affection and sympathy. In our delusive world, we can easily feel isolated and scared of catching the virus or our loved ones catching it. This year, though, has given all of us who are Zen practitioners a chance to really go deeply into ourselves, to look closely at who we are. It can help wake you up to what surrounds you, what surrounds us, to see that every place the eye alights is who you are. Tozan said, when it is cold, the cold kills you. Tozan directs the monk to feel the cold, to let himself go in it, to face each wintry moment and shiver uncontrollably when the temperature plummets below minus. I once had the chance to meet the polar explorer, Rosie Stancer, when she was speaking about her expeditions on the surface of the frozen Arctic Ocean. She said that in the quiet cold around her, hauling sledges more than twice her body weight, her consciousness vanished in each moment, into each moment. And in 1999, she and 4 other women set out completely alone from the edge of Antarctica and completed, I think it was over 1,000-kilometer journey to the South Pole in 61 days. At night, she said that the sleeping body in its zipped duvet bag acts on its own when the cold is minus 50 degrees centigrade. At that temperature, it can jackknife into a right angle and rouse you from sleep before you automatically lie down and sleep again. Incredible, isn't it? One body and mind. It echoes Zen Master Dogo's words in case 54 in the Shoyoroku. It's like reaching back with your hand behind your head in the middle of the night and groping for your pillow. Case 54 is called the Great Mercy. We live in great mercy. It's unstoppable. An abundance of gifts are showering upon us, unseen and unnoticed in our delusive world, all the time. When you feel frightened and anxious, it's good to take time to really look at what is in front of you, to stay with it and listen and see what happens. Then, whatever your situation, you might find you can take heart. In Dogen's True Dharma Eye, there's a commentary by John Dido Laurie on case 225 in this book, which is called Tozan's Cold and Heat. And John Dido Laurie says, Tozans go to the place where there is no cold or heat, is like flowers blooming on a withered tree in the midst of the frozen tundra. His let the cold kill you, let the heat kill you, is a roaring furnace that consumes every phrase, idea, and thing in the universe. Even the Buddhas and sages cannot survive it. Nothing remains. He goes on. However, we should understand clearly that this let the cold kill you is not about cooling off. Cold is just cold through and through. Let the heat kill you is not about facing the fire. Heat is just heat through and through. Furthermore, there's no relationship between Tozan's heat and cold. Heat does not become cold. Cold does not become heat. Then John Laurie ends his commentary with a nice question about the real matter. He says, the real question is, where do you find yourself? Where do you find yourself? If the mind jumps up to answer, we're caught in discrimination straight away. The wonderful mind, with all its extraordinary gifts, can't help us, even though that might seem hard. It's such a relief to let it all go, to let go of opinions and judgments and criticisms, judging, fears. In stillness, mind and object merge, and you find Buddha in everything, even in yourself. You yourself, Buddha. Even though nothing exists. Daily life never stops endlessly expanding the Dharma. It's a miracle to live in endlessly expounding Dharma. Great Master Tozan, who was born in 807 AD in China, is one of the shining giants of Zen. And I wish this Teisho could really do justice to him. He's our 38th ancestor in the Soto line. And even as a boy, he showed great promise and insight and was sent to a local temple to study Buddhism. When he was 21, he took his monk's vows, and he spent his early life visiting and receiving instruction from distinguished Zen masters and adepts. When he was studying with Zen master Isan, Tozan asked him, "I've heard that national teacher Nanyo Echo taught that inanimate beings expound Dharma. I don't understand this clearly." There was something about Nanyo's words which stirred Tozan greatly, but for a long time he was unable to penetrate the meaning. He wasn't yet completely free of this dualistic world. Eventually, Isan advised Tozan to go to Ungan Donjo, the man who was to become his teacher and later grant him Dharma Transmission. This is how their meeting went. Tozan asked Ungan, "Who can hear the insentient when they expound the Dharma?" Ungan answered, "The insentient can." Tozan asked, "Can you hear it?" Ungan said, "If I could hear it, you wouldn't hear my preaching of the Dharma." "Why wouldn't I hear you?" asked Tozan. Ungan held up his whisk and asked, "Can you hear this?" "No, I don't," said Tozan. Ungan said, "If you can't hear me when I expound the Dharma, how can you hear when insentient beings proclaim it?" Then Ungan added, "The lakes and rivers, the birds and trees and the forests all chant Buddha. They all chant Dharma." Tozan gained some insight on hearing this, but it wasn't until later that he had a complete awakening and finally understood. He was crossing a stream and looked down into the water, which reflected Tozan's presence in it. Then he could hear the preaching of the insentient. In his freedom and relief and joy, Tozan wrote this Enlightenment poem. Avoid seeking him in someone else, or you will be far apart from the self. Solitary now am I, and independent. But I meet him everywhere. He is now surely me, but I am not him. Understanding it in this way, you will be directly one with thusness. Dogen Zenji said, insentient beings hearing insentient beings speak Dharma is essentially all Buddhas hearing all Buddhas speak Dharma. No separation at all between non-sentient beings and Buddhas. One universal family, alone right now, sitting on your cushion. When he was 52, Tozan established a mountain school, the Kedong School on Mount Dong. He is said to have guided between 500 and 1,000 disciples. And out of interest, I looked up the temperatures there in what is now Jiangxi province in China. And in winter, it drops to minus 15 degrees centigrade, and in summer, it rises to 41 degrees centigrade. So Tozan knew all about cold and heat. The Kedong school came to be regarded as one of the 5 houses of Zen. Almost 4 centuries after Tozan's death, or 358 to be more exact, Dogen studied Kedong Buddhism in China with his teacher, Tiantong Rujin. And when he later returned to Japan, he continued Tozan's lineage by establishing this school as the Soto sect. Of Tozan, Dogen said, the ancient ancestor has the treasury of the true Dharma eye. Tozan died greatly mourned at the age of 63, leaving a legacy of his remarkable teaching in the poem called The 5 Ranks, which described the interplay of absolute and relative truth in the stages of Zen realization. That's more simply how the eternal and the transitory are interfused. And Tozan leaves us his recorded sayings and many lively stories about him and his students. The song of the Jeweled Mirror Samadhi poem is often attributed to him, although it may have been given to him by his teacher Ungan, and I think the matter's in doubt. But the true fact is, though, that Tozan hasn't gone anywhere. He's right here, right now. Thinking about Tozan and the preaching of the Dharma by the non-sentient makes a film which came out last year come to mind. Some of you have probably seen it. It's called My Octopus Teacher. And it's about a cameraman who has become so burnt out by his work that he's lost all interest in himself, in life, and in his son. And then in the depths of his depression, he remembers the kelp forests underwater that he used to swim in near Cape Town, where the water is icy because of the cold Atlantic currents. And the film records him swimming in a mask and snorkel every day through the kelp forest, past animals and plants of every kind. There's not much dialogue, but as days turn into months, and one day you hear him say suddenly, that he started to crave the cold. It was a turning point. He was responding to the touch of the water. Little by little, the colors and shapes, the life and death situations under the ocean, nudging him into waking up. Even an octopus reaches out a tentacle towards him. The water, the fish, the octopus, the kelp forest, the sunlight, and the shadows were each preaching the Dharma, each alone and shining. And then he asked his son to start swimming with him, but I'd better stop there. I can't believe it's 12 years since I first came to the Philippines and the Sambo-Zen Kenshukai, but I remember all of us who were invited by our abbot, Ryon Roshi, felt as though we were being bathed in love by you all. Carmen arranged an excursion for us midweek to a wonderful island. I'm sorry, I can't remember its name, where you could swim in crystal clear water and see incredible marine life, including blue starfish on the seabed. And that day, the sun was very strong. And typically, Sister Rosario took off the shirt she was wearing over her dress and gave it to me for protection in the water. Getting back on the coach at the end of the day, everything on the coach was sharp. The steel of the hand grip, the feel of the cushion material of the seat, the reflection through the window. We returned to the Good Shepherd Convent at Tagatai, and there were flowers in the garden by the front door. Inside, there were the walls and chairs. Tozan once wrote a poem about it. Wonderful, wonderful. The preaching of the Dharma by the non-sentient is inconceivable. If you try to hear it with your ears, it is hard to understand. When you listen with your mind's eye, then you know it. I think this is a good place to stop and thank everyone. It's been a very great happiness to share this time with you.